Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take your pile of sources and turn them into the kind of knowledge that makes you feel instantly well-informed.
Today we are talking about a real star in the kitchen garden.
A deceptively complicated one, I think. We're focusing on basil, Ocimum basilicum.
Basil is the culinary hero that everyone wants, but, few feel they truly master. It's so rewarding, endless pesto, fresh caprese salads, but it can feel like a race against time.
That is the classic story, isn't it? You buy this beautiful, bushy plant from the store, and then 2 weeks later, it's just this leggy stick with a few flowers on top.
And the leaves get bitter. It's a common tragedy.
Exactly. It creates this mindset that says, okay, I get one good harvest, and then I have to start all over again. Our listener's goal here is different. It's not just to grow basil.
No, it's to achieve a constant, nonstop pesto factory.
Moving from that annual struggle to a truly perpetual producer.
And to do that, you have to understand its core identity, why it behaves the way it does. We're not just following instructions on a seed packet. We're learning to manage its tropical nature.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission is to take basil from a single seed or even a cutting and turn it into a lush, perpetual producer by fundamentally mastering its care.
From the roots all the way to the pruning shears.
So where do we start? You said tropical.
You have to think tropical. I mean, basil is a member of the mint family, and it originated in the hot, stable climates of Central Africa and Southeast Asia. And that's key.
So even though we grow it everywhere, that ancestral memory is still running the show.
It dictates everything. While it's adaptable enough to be an annual all over the world, it wants heat.
So when we're talking about that, how non-negotiable is the warmth, really?
It is entirely non-negotiable. If you live somewhere warm, you might get basil to act like a biennial or even a small perennial shrub, which is its natural state.
But for most of us.
For most of us, if the temperature drops below 60 degrees Fahrenheit, the plant just stalls. It stops growing. It starts sulking.
Right, and the goal here isn't just survival. We
Right.
want that explosive, vigorous growth.
Exactly. And you only get that vibrant, quick production when temperatures are consistently above 70 degrees Fahrenheit. And if you get even a light frost,
It's over.
it's over. Your basil will die back instantly. It has absolutely zero tolerance for cold.
That makes perfect sense. It's like a perpetual vacationer. So if it loves heat that much, it must love light. But this is where it gets tricky, right?
This is the tightrope.
The sun can save it, but the sun can also scorch it.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah.
Basil is light-loving, it's heat-tolerant, so it needs full exposure. We're talking 6 to 8 hours of direct sun every single day.
And indoors.
Indoors, there's really no substitute for a powerful, unshaded, south-facing window.
But I've definitely seen basil leaves go crispy and brown when a heat wave hits 95 degrees. The danger of frying them is real.
Oh, it's a huge threat, especially when you get that intense heat, say, nearing 100 degrees, paired with direct, unfiltered sun. And that leads to maybe the most interesting finding in the sources.
Okay.
The staggered light strategy. This is how you guarantee a nonstop harvest and avoid that midsummer crash.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Why not just plant everything in my sunniest spot? Wouldn't that be best?
You'd think so, but if you do that, all of your basil hits the same environmental stress at the same time.
And they all bolt at once.
They all flower at the same time, exactly.
Mhm.
The staggered light strategy means you're planting basil in 3 different lighting environments to delay that reproductive trigger.
Okay, so walk us through those 3 environments.
First, you have your full sun batch. This is where you'll get the fastest, most vigorous growth. This is your immediate summer yield, the stuff for that massive pesto batch you want to make right now.
But there's a trade-off.
The trade-off is that the intense heat and light stresses the plant, which makes it the most likely to bolt first.
So that's your rapid use plant. What about the long game?
For the longer-lasting supply, you use dappled light. You place a second batch under some shade cloth, or maybe in the partial shadow of taller plants.
Like tomatoes or peppers?
Tomatoes are perfect for this. This spot gives you medium-paced growth, but because the plant is a little less stressed, it is far more resistant to bolting. It extends its lifespan quite a bit.
And the final location, the insurance policy.
That's your full shade batch. Now, this will give you the slowest growth, absolutely, but this batch lasts the longest, often producing well into the cooler parts of the season. It will be the absolute last to bolt.
So you're essentially manipulating the plant's internal clock by controlling how much solar energy it gets. That completely changes how I think about garden layout.
Exactly. Instead of putting everything in the one best spot, you're using the sun as a growth regulator.
And that ties into companion planting, doesn't it?
Directly. Basil thrives when it's planted among other warm weather plants, like you said, peppers, zucchini, and especially tomatoes. Those bigger plants provide that necessary shelter and dappled shade that prevents scorching.
Let's move from the sun down into the soil. This is where I think most people get into trouble with basil, the roots.
The basal root system is so sensitive. It's really sensitive to both extremes. It can't tolerate drought. Those big leaves need constant water. But it also cannot handle drowning. It will get root rot almost instantly.
So the problem to solve is finding a soil that drains incredibly well, but also holds on to just enough moisture.
That's the engineering challenge.
So if I have really nice, rich compost in my garden bed, why can't I just stick the basil in there? Isn't that high organic content what it wants?
It's a great question, and the reason is usually density. Traditional garden soil, even with compost, it tends to compact, especially after rain.
Oh, okay.
That compact structure just holds water for too long right around the roots, and they suffocate. You have to think of basil roots needing something like a high-performance running shoe.
What do you mean?
Great drainage, but the material itself is spongy enough to absorb water and hold it before letting the excess go.
So you really need to use a specific type of growing medium.
Yes, you really should use a true potting mix. Something fluffy, high in organic content like peat or coir. And if you're container growing, which basil is perfect for, drainage holes are completely non-negotiable.
Does the pot size matter?
Immensely. A really common beginner mistake is using a pot that's just too small. It should be at least 4 to 6 inches deep and a bare minimum of half a gallon in volume.
Go bigger if you can, especially indoors.
Always opt for larger indoors. The small ones just cycle between soggy and bone dry way too fast, and that stresses the plant out.
Which is exactly what we're trying to avoid. So on watering, how do we reliably keep it moist without ever getting it soggy?
The old-fashioned finger test is still the best. Just stick your index finger 1 inch deep into the soil. If soil clings to your finger when you pull it out, there's enough moisture. Don't water.
And you'll probably end up watering every 2 or 3 days when it's hot.
In the 70s or above, yeah. And critically, just stop watering completely if you're getting a lot of rain.
I've heard there's a better way to water herbs in pots, though. Not from the top.
Watering from below. It's the superior method for almost all container herbs. You just place the pot in a shallow dish of water and let the soil wick up what it needs from the bottom.
That seems so much easier.
It ensures the whole root ball gets hydrated without the plant sitting in a puddle. It also keeps the leaves dry, which helps prevent fungal issues.
Okay, let's talk about feeding. If you're pruning aggressively, let's say 3 times a week, you have to be pulling a lot of nutrients out of that soil.
You are. That's the key connection. Basil isn't a super heavy feeder like a tomato plant, but that constant cutting demands replenishment. And since we're harvesting the leaves, we need to focus on one nutrient in particular.
That would be nitrogen, the N in NPK.
Exactly. Nitrogen drives leafy vegetative growth. Phosphorus, the P, is for roots and flowers, and potassium K is for overall health. For basil, it's all about the N.
So what's a good feeding schedule for outdoor plants?
For liquid feeding, a source favorite is something like Alaska fish fertilizer. It's often rated 511 MPK. See that high first number?
Heavy on the nitrogen.
Right. You'd apply that at about 2 to 3 tablespoons per gallon, maybe every 7 to 10 days during peak season.
And what about for the roots? Do we need to supplement that?
It's a good idea to add a granular feed once a month. Just a handful of an all-purpose organic granular, like a 555, scratched into the soil surface. That provides a longer, slower feed for root health and micronutrients.
And for those of us growing indoors who maybe don't want the house to smell like a fish market every week.
A very necessary consideration. Yeah, for indoor plants, skip the fish emulsion. Use a diluted, water-soluble synthetic fertilizer instead, like a balanced 20-20-20 every 1 to 2 weeks.
Dilution is key there, I imagine.
Oh, yeah. You want a steady, gentle feeding? Too much fertilizer can actually be a bad thing. It can cause the plant to grow these long, weak stems with small leaves, which is the exact opposite of what we want.
Right. Okay, let's move to propagation. We have 3 ways to start this infinite basil factory. From seeds, the supermarket hack, and cuttings.
Starting from seed gives you really strong foundational plants. A good tip is to soak your seeds for 6 to 12 hours before planting. It just gives them a head start.
And for planting them?
Use a sterile germination mix. Plant maybe 8 to 10 seeds, about half an inch deep.
Germination can be slow, though, can it? Just 2 weeks?
It can, but you can speed it up with heat. Again, it's all about heat. Basil seeds need it to be about 70 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, so a heat mat is ideal.
And if you don't have one,
your sunniest south-facing window, and cover the soil loosely with some plastic wrap to keep the moisture and humidity in. You should see sprouts in 5 to 14 days.
Now, when they first sprout, the leaves look a little weird. They don't look like basil.
Right. The first set of leaves are the cotyledons. They're the starter leaves from the seed. They look rounder. They're just there to feed the seedling until it grows its first true leaves.
And those are the ones that actually look like tiny basil leaves.
Exactly. Once you see 2 sets of those true leaves, you know your plant is on its way. Okay, now for the supermarket hack. This is for instant gratification, right? But those pots from the store always look so dense and unhealthy.
They are. They are engineered for a quick sale, not for a long life. The pot you buy is probably 20 or more individual plants, all crammed together.
And if you leave them like that?
They compete for everything. Light, water, nutrients, and they just fail. They'll bolt almost immediately.
So the hack is just to break them up.
Literally. You gently pull that whole clump apart. You can separate it into 2 or 4 smaller clumps. Or if you're feeling patient, you can separate every single stem. It looks harsh, but you have to do it.
And then what? You just pot them up?
Pot them up individually in fresh potting mix. Trim off any excess lower leaves. And this is critical. You immediately cut the top growing tip right off.
That feels so aggressive.
It is, but it's necessary to shock the plant out of its temporary grocery store mode and into a robust, bushy growth mode. Give them a few weeks and they will transform into these beautiful, full plants. That's a great shortcut. But for a truly infinite supply, we have to talk about cuttings.
What's fascinating here is cuttings are the real perpetual supply trick. Because basil is in the mint family, it roots incredibly easily. And when you take a cutting, you're not just getting a new plant.
You're actually helping the parent plant.
You are. You're encouraging the parent plant to become bushier. It's a massive win-win.
So walk us through the perfect cutting. What are the steps?
Okay, you want a clean, non-woody stem, something about 3 to 6 inches long. Use clean scissors. Make a sharp cut just below a leaf node. That's the little bump where leaves connect to the stem.
And then you prep it.
You remove the lowest set of leaves, leaving just a couple of sets at the top. This is so those bottom leaves don't rot in the water.
Then just stick it in a glass of water.
The simple glass of tap water. Make sure at least one of those lower nodes is fully submerged, and then just put it on a sunny windowsill.
How fast does this work? It sounds too easy.
It can be shockingly fast. In a warm spot, you can see little white roots in as little as 4 days. Once it has maybe 7 or more roots that are each at least an inch long, it's ready to plant in potting mix.
This brings us to the most important part, harvesting. This is the key to getting that bountiful harvest and, more importantly, avoiding the dreaded bolting.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because if you fail here, none of the other stuff matters. Bolting is just the plant entering its reproductive phase.
It's trying to make flowers and seeds.
Exactly. And when it does that, the stem gets woody, the leaves shrink, and the flavor turns bitter as the plant redirects all its energy. Our job is to delay that process relentlessly.
So we are constantly fighting the plant's biological goal. And the main weapon is our pruning technique.
And the first rule is you never harvest basil by just picking off single leaves from the bottom of the plant. That's the most common mistake.
Why is that so bad?
It just makes the plant leggy and weak, and it actually encourages it to bolt faster. You should only start harvesting once the plant has at least 2, preferably 3, established leaf nodes.
And we have to go for that harsh, aggressive cut that feels so wrong.
It's an act of what I'd call aggressive love. You want to cut the main stem right above a leaf node, making sure you leave at least 1 full node below your cut.
So if a stem has 5 sets of leaves, you might cut above the 3rd set from the bottom.
Perfect example. You are literally removing the plant's main growing point.
And why is cutting above the node so important? What's the mechanism there?
When you remove that main stem, you're removing the source of something called apical dominance. It's a plant hormone that stops sideways growth.
Oh.
The node directly below your cut, which was dormant, is now chemically forced to wake up. And every node has 2 little buds in it, 1 on each side.
So that one stem you cut doesn't just grow back as one new shoot.
No, it forces those 2 dormant buds to transform into 2 entirely new stems. 1 stem becomes 2, those 2 become 4, 4 become 8. You're exponentially doubling your future harvest with every single snip.
And you're tricking the plant into staying in its leafy, vegetative phase.
You're constantly resetting its clock.
The sources say to do this 3 times a week. That sounds almost cruel. Isn't that stressing it too much?
It feels like it, but the goal is constant destruction. Basil is so vigorous. The sources recommend pruning that aggressively during peak summer growth to maximize that bushiness. And if you ever see a flower head starting to form, cut it off immediately.
Every cut is a signal to grow more leaves.
It's fertilizer for future growth.
Even with perfect technique, though, there are still challenges. Pests, fungal issues, what are the common culprits?
Outdoors, you might see some leaf-eating beetles or slugs. Indoors, the big one is usually aphids, those tiny white or green insects that cluster up and suck the sap.
What's the best defense that still keeps the leaves safe to eat?
For most of those pests, a simple insecticidal soap solution or a neem oil spray is very effective. Just make sure you get the undersides of the leaves.
And what about that white, dusty stuff you sometimes see?
That's powdery mildew. It's a common fungal issue. A diluted milk spray actually works wonders for that. The proteins in the milk act as a natural fungicide.
So what's the best proactive measure to avoid all this?
Prevention is always better than a cure. Good air circulation is essential, inside and out, and consistent sunlight. That minimizes the damp, low-light conditions where pests and fungi really take hold.
Finally, let's talk year-round production. Basil dies at the first frost. How do we keep the factory running through winter?
You have to bring some of it indoors. The easiest way is, right before your first expected frost, dig up your small to medium, non-bolting plants.
Why a smaller one?
They handle the transplant shock much, much better than large, woody established plants. Relocate them into big pots. I'm talking 3 to 7 gallons.
And where do you put them inside?
They need the absolute sunniest spot you have. A south-facing window in the northern hemisphere is your best bet.
And if that's not enough light?
It probably won't be for real production. Basil can survive on low light. But to get that vigorous growth we want, you'll need to use supplemental grow lights to mimic that intense tropical sun.
So what does this all mean? We started with what people call a finicky annual, but it seems we can turn it into a real powerhouse.
Basil is one of the most productive and flavorful herbs you can possibly grow, but only if you manage its very specific tropical needs: the heat, the light, the moist but not soggy soil, and most importantly, you have to master its life cycle.
It really seems to reward aggression.
It absolutely does. The more you cut it and prune it, the more you trick it into producing for you.
The key takeaways seem pretty clear then. Well-drained, fluffy soil, a nitrogen-heavy fertilizer, using that cutting hack for an infinite supply, and above all, mastering that aggressive pruning technique.
Cutting right above the nodes. That's the secret to exponential growth and preventing that premature bolting.
It's interesting to think about. The plant's entire biological purpose is to flower and reproduce.
And ultimately to die. The gardener's goal is to constantly and successfully trick it into prioritizing foliage above all else. When you look at your next basil plant, just consider that constant quiet battle going on. It's a battle between its natural lifespan and your cutting shears.
That dynamic tension is the secret to an unlimited supply of fresh pesto.
That's it right there.
Until next time.